Hey there! You're listening to the BakuDeku podcast, hosted by Mimi the BKDK for the BakuDekus, plus Ultra! Hello there. This is Mimi the BKDK with episode 4. How are you all? I just released episode 0 of the podcast today. This is April 1st. I'm going to be talking to you guys from the future. Wait, the past? The future. Well, you know what? We're not going to get into time traveling. That's a very complicated topic. Anyway, I did want to start out with some corrections to things I said in episode 3. I kind of went back and I watched some anime, the Boku no Hero anime, of the episodes that I covered in the manga, and basically I read it wrong because my Nihongo needs some brushing up. So, first of all, I had said there was a pun when Deku walks into the classroom for the first time and he sees Kacchan and Ida. I had thought Horikoshi was making some kind of pun with stop. No, he wasn't saying stop. He was just saying the top 2 scariest people that he was hoping to not meet were there. Tsu topu. Tsu is 2 and then top is top. So that wasn't a pun. Yeah. Anyway, for this podcast episode, we're gonna do things a little bit differently. So I watched the anime ahead and I took some notes. And I mostly was using it to help supplement my understanding of the manga. I'm still reading the manga, but I was having such a hard time and I was just struggling through so many things, and I don't know about you, but it was painful. But we're just switching up a little bit so, you don't get bored. The first 3 episodes were me struggling through the manga. Now you're gonna get a combination of just me winging off my notes and occasionally looking at the manga, but I already have what I want to talk about. I guess another thing is, what's interesting is, because I watched the anime and I was looking down at the manga at the same time, I noticed the differences that the anime made with Deku. It seems like, because first of all, the anime chooses different shots to portray the character. So in the manga, you gotta move at a pace. You have about 19 pages for a chapter. You don't have all the panels in the world to show someone's facial expressions. However, in anime, while someone is talking, you can change the shot. And you also, theoretically, you can also change the pacing. So in a chapter, several things will happen. But in the anime, you can stretch out, say for example, the upcoming Deku versus Kacchan fight into like 3 episodes, right? Whereas, maybe in the manga, it'll just take like 2 chapters at the most. We'll get to it. But this episode is just gonna be comparing the differences that the anime made and the manga, and what does that do to your to one's interpretation of BakuDeku, same thing, the ship. And ultimately, I think they both align very well with Horikoshi's intent to portray these 2 not really as enemies, but as one person who is in fear and the other person who doesn't really think much of the other. Can you guess which one it is? The one who's in fear is actually Kacchan and not Deku. Like, yes, Deku gets startled and he's super anxious, but that's actually a large part, not all, a large part of his personality. Surely, Kacchan probably beat him up or bullied him or whatever. He did something bad to him. Mileage may vary with what that means, but clearly, he's not on good terms with Kacchan, and Kacchan, has probably used violence at some point. He has. He's put him up against the wall behind the school building, but such a way that, Deku doesn't exactly think of flowers when he sees Kacchan. However, what people may not notice when they first watch the anime, or when they're looking at the manga, or, if they're not doing a podcast like I am, they may not notice that the whole fear thing that Kacchan had with Deku has always been here. And it's very clear if you go back and you take a look at their expressions, more closely. Like, if you're just reading through it, you might miss it, but we'll get right into it. Okay, so that's enough of a preamble. So let's get right through it. So last time we left off, we were in Deku just went to school for the first time, and he, goes into the classroom. He's scared of his new classmates, Ida. Well, Kacchan's not a new classmate, but it's going to be a new classmate at UA, meets Uraraka, and all of that. So what's interesting here is we see some main characters, which is Ida, well, main character for now, Uraraka. Aizawa shows up and he's like, all right, I know what you guys just got here, but I need you to put on your gym uniforms and we're gonna do stuff. And then they go do stuff, and that is a quirk test. In Japanese, it's koseihaku testo. And then Uraraka is like, oh my god, what about the orientation, blah blah blah. And Aizawa is just like, psh, you don't got time for that if you're gonna be heroes. And later on he says, you only have 3 years, so time's a wasting. We gotta go now. You gotta train to be a hero. And here's a crucial difference. So in the anime, Aizawa explicitly points out or asks Kacchan, to go first, because he's like, Bakugo, you scored the highest in your quirkless physical assessment test or whatever. Wait, assessment, same thing. Anyway, he said, hey Bakugo, in middle school you scored the highest, right, in your physical assessment. But in the manga, he's just like, he doesn't even say that. He implies it. He just says, Bakugo, what was your score for softball throwing? But in the anime, he's just like, you were the highest, right? And then he's like, oh, what's your score? Anyway, that's a minor difference. I'm not sure why they made that change. Maybe because it would make more sense for Aizawa to select Kacchan, because he has other people in the class. Like, he has Todoroki and Yaoyorozu and Ida. They're all rich kids. So he's like, he could have easily picked the kids who got the school recommendations. Not school recommendations, just recommendations in general. But nope, we don't even see Todoroki, the fandom's favorite. We see Aizawa pick on Kacchan. So that could be a reason why. Or the other reason is Kacchan's important to Boku no Hero, and they need to set up a standard that Deku has to beat in the forthcoming chapters, because they're rivals, and Kacchan's an obstacle. He's part of the trio, if you remember my previous episodes, that prevent him from becoming a hero. He's still that obstacle. He's that last obstacle. Anyway, so Aizawa tells him, here, as long as you don't step out of the circle, you can do whatever you want. Throw this ball. And then Kacchan's like, I will do it with all of my power. Omoikiri na. Njama! And then he throws it, and he's like, shine! Right? It's kabooey! Into the sky! And then we get a panel of Deku's hair being hair, and he's just like, shinu? Like, oh my god, Kacchan. Like, not like scared, it's just like, I can't believe it. This guy, like, he's still saying the stuff. Kind of a face. Just like, it's a joke. This is a joke. And I believe a really common argument for why people hate Kacchan, which is fine. He was obnoxious to me in the beginning. Is that, like, this kid is always saying, like, die, shine, korosuzo, like, I'll kill you, or like, just, he's a meanie. But I believe, this panel actually kind of emphasizes that when he says these things, it's not necessarily him actually saying die. It's more like, a little kid being like throwing tantrums, and they'll say things. This Deku's response to that kind of, accentuates that. Like, even though Kacchan is a big meanie and doesn't have any friends, especially in UA for a while, and like no one's gonna take him seriously, least of all Deku. For all the arguments about how Deku is like this tortured soul and Kacchan destroyed his self-esteem, well, Deku can still be like, oh my god, really? At Kacchan. He does this very often, like just always like his eyes are just like, I can't believe he said that. Like he expects it, but it's like, I can't believe it. This kid is my age, and he's still saying things like, yeah, very immature, very childish, and that's played for laughs. And also in this panel there is Kirishima-kun. He's also making a face of just like, okay, with the little sweat droopy. Yeah, no one takes Kacchan seriously. And anyway, after that comedic beat, Aizawa was just like, oh, look, it's this number. It's 705.2 meters. Pretty impressive. And then after that, Deku goes into like panic mode because he's just like, oh my god, there's like 8 tests. How am I gonna get through all of these? Like, I didn't expect this. Crap, I got through the entrance exam, but now I had to do this quirk test? Holy crap! And he's like panicking as Aizawa's drawn with like very, he's drawn with like lines for shadows. They are reminiscent of like horror manga. If you take a look at like any of Junji Ito's works, whenever he wants to draw like something cast in like heavy shadows, they'll do like not hatch lines, but just like straight lines down, like where the shadows would be. And that's exactly what Horikoshi does here. Now, it's not, I think it serves twofold, but mostly for sort of comedic effect, because it's like, one, serious because the conflict of this chapter is if Deku doesn't figure out a way to pass these tests, even though he hasn't controlled one for all, he's gonna like be expelled. That's what Aizawa is saying. But two, it's like, this is so ridiculous, and yet he's drawn in such a dramatically serious / horrifying way. Anyway, this is something I think people may not be so good at reading in the manga, or maybe people who are new to like reading manga or they haven't read enough. But it's like, just because a character is drawn angry, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to take it as a serious moment. So, even though we're still in the first volume and there's only been like a few chapters, and Kacchan is not in every single panel, but up to this point, we've been given plenty of panels where Kacchan's anger is played off as comedy, and Kacchan's anger is actually played as real. Like, this is a serious story beat. Like, no laughing here. There's something here that the readers need to pay attention to, need to keep a track of, because it's going to either become a conflict that needs to be resolved later on, or it's going to be the conflict that's going to appear in the next 3 pages. So, what I'm trying to say is, Horikoshi does this a lot. Usually, because when you're writing a story, if it's too serious for a very long time, people will get fatigued. So he has a tendency to insert a comedic beat after very heavy stuff. And well, if we look back, so this actually is still in the same chapter from that I was talking about in the last episode, when Deku goes to UA. And in that last chapter, towards the end, we got a flashback of Kacchan thinking about before they went to UA. There was a flashback where he shoves Deku up against the wall, and he's just like, explain to me, nerd, how you got in. I thought I told you to not go to UA, and you defied me. I don't understand. Like, please explain. And in the anime, like, he actually, kind of like rocks him back and forth, not really like hitting him, but just kind of like being hysterical, you know. And Deku's just like, oh my god, you know, let go of me, like I'm going to UA no matter what. But overall, it was a serious scene. It was a very intense scene where we saw Deku basically show Kacchan exactly why he's scared of him. Okay, so now we're kind of going backwards a little bit, but I think this is really important. So in the anime, it was framed a little bit differently than in the manga, mostly because it's a little bit longer than manga. The manga had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 truncated panels for that. But in the anime, they show it, and then I think when they show that flashback again. Kacchan thinks about that moment. Actually, no, it only shows once. Sorry. But the point is, when he thinks about it, it lasts a little bit longer. There are like, you know, multiple shots composed from different angles. But what's key here is, so in both in the manga and the anime, when the scene starts, Kacchan is drawn angrily, but in a comedic way. So, in the manga, when he says "Hokai ikutsu taro ga," basically what she's saying is, I told you to go to a different place. That's what I said. He's drawn with like no pupils, and his mouth is like super wide, but like the proportions are all dramatized, all exaggerated. Because it's like, you're not meant to feel fear. Like, you're not meant to be in Deku's shoes and be like, oh my god, this bully is tormenting Deku's life and is like gonna murder him, you know, if he goes to UA. It's more of a like he's being angry and he's kind of like you know, nobody likes him, that kind of like guy. But then it shifts in the next 2 panels where you see Kacchan's face drawn properly. In the manga, we only get 1 panel of this, of just a profile shot, you know, and there's like a screen tone over it, and all you see is his eye. You don't see his mouth, but you can clearly see that his eye is wide. And depending on how you're reading it, it just might seem like he's just angry and he's just waiting for what he says. But in the anime, he actually like flinches or just goes when, you know, Deku grabs his arm and is like, I'm going to UA. Like, he's just like, oh crap. Deku is actually really strong, more strong than I always pretend he isn't. And the way you can tell this is because of how it's drawn. Again, when Kacchan is first introduced in the scene, there's a specific term in storyboarding. I forgot, but when they change locations and then they change the camera angle, the second camera angle change in the setting behind the school, first panel, you know what, we're just gonna count by panels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th panel from the beginning of that scene, Kacchan's face, drawn comically. He's angry, we know he's angry, but the viewer/reader isn't meant to take this as, oh no, something bad's gonna go down. It's kind of just like, yeah, look at this guy. He's being silly, really comical, really exaggerated. But then in the next panel, when Deku grabs his arm, and then the next panel after that, face is drawn normal again. You know, there's screen tone over his face. That is when Horikoshi is telling you to be like, wait, now this is actually serious. This is actually a pivotal plot point, pivotal character point. And that is something that we're going to pay attention to a lot, because Kacchan has a lot of serious moments with Deku, but he's also played for laughs, because his anger and his attitude is so over the top that it's just easy to, like, something bad is happening, okay, just stick angry Pomeranian in the corner and make him do something. Have him scream, Shine! And then, you know, you'll feel a little bit less tension, and then you can go back to like, alright, tension rising time. Anyway, Aizawa drawn here very seriously. Situation is kind of ridiculous, so it's like it's definitely serious, but also sort of like not as serious as it could be. I guess you could just catalyze that serious. But I also say this because Boku no Hero does get darker as you read, and when characters drawn seriously, it's just meant to be read seriously. I think Horikoshi stops doing this like, haha, look at this teacher. He's being so serious about expelling kids. Oh, that's a real dilemma, but also, haha, it's kind of funny. Like, he's so serious. Like Horikoshi, I think he stops doing that, you know. And when characters are serious, it's serious time. But not right now. Right now, it's just a hero school, and the worst thing that can happen to Deku is that he's gonna get kicked out of UA before he can do anything. So you turn the page, and then Deku's just like, oh my god, panicking some more because he can only do 100% one for all or 0%. And then you go to the next page, and you know Aizawa has some crazy eyes, and he's just like, the freedom, the jiu of UA is what the teachers can do. And yeah, this is UA Koko Hirokada. This is the hero course. You think you're just here to have fun? Haha. And then this is over a panel of, well, it's split by Aizawa's speech bubble. On the right, there's Tsuyu, Aoyama, and Shoji. And then on the left, it's Kacchan again, but instead of being concerned about this dilemma, well, one, he's not, because he's cocky and he knows he's gonna be fine, but he has a grin. He's like, yes, a challenge. This is what I wanted. I want to be a hero, you know, and the UA hero course is just perfect. Yes, challenge. And then underneath it, we get Deku's face again. It's a parallel. Not a parallel. It's contrast. It's contrasting. You have Kacchan smiling in the face of adversity, and you have Deku, who isn't smiling. He's like, I want to run. He's just like, oh crap. And this kind of portrayal is really important because you will see later on their faces kind of change, like the way they react to situations change. Later on, Kacchan will be the one who's making fearful faces, not smiling as much anymore. And Deku, he's gonna be the one where he's like, this is a challenge, but instead of running away, I'm gonna go right into it. You know, they do a role reversal. Instead of Kacchan being all gung-ho, it's gonna be Deku. But that role reversal is slow, and it can only happen because in the very beginning, we have Kacchan established as a character who's just like, haha, yeah, challenge, smiles. And Deku is like, oh no, this is a challenge, crap, what do I do? And after that, we get panels of Ida, you know, doing the anime glasses thing, pushing it up, and then Uraraka being like, oh, I gotta do this, I can't get expelled. And then the chapter ends. We get Ida, like a Ida page. He's wearing an incredibly boring long sleeve and pants. And then we get the class file of Deku, and he's so cute, he's full, and oh god, chapter 307 versus this Deku, what happened? Horikoshi, what did you do? Anyway, if you turn the page, it's continuation. It's a continuation of the quirk testing. And before I move on, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but I was looking at my notes and I forgot to mention that another difference in the anime and the manga. And this is, I'm bringing this up because I'm gonna track this or kind of keep in mind as we have more Deku versus Kacchan moments. But in the anime, back in the flashback where Kacchan is like, why? I told you to go to another school, and he's like rocking it back and forth against the wall. That entire scene takes place in the darkness. So there's like a shadow cast, probably by a building or something. Deku and Kacchan are like in the shadow completely. They're like not touching the light at all. This isn't depicted in the manga because the panel is really tiny. We just see enough to know that they're behind the school or something, and Kacchan, is like rocking against the wall. Back to quirk tests. There is another interesting thing. So in the anime, when Aizawa is talking about the types of things they'll have to do as a hero, in the anime they show the animation of the sludge monster, but in the manga it's not that clear that it's sludge monster. It's just interesting. I don't know if they're trying to save on animation time, or if they wanted to just kind of keep in mind, like, yeah, you're not always gonna be like doing like one kind of work. There's gonna be lots of kinds. Yes, he's explaining that there's a lot to do as a hero, and there is no time for orientation or funsies. You have 3 years to become a hero. Yeah, I'm gonna put you through the ringer. That's the only way for you to become great heroes. And then, we get a montage of everyone, passing the tests. Ida's super fast. Tsuyu is afterwards. Uraraka is clever, or tries to be, and she takes off the weight of her shoulders and her legs. You see Aoyama using his, laser to, go, and then Mina's like next to him, but then his quirk, doesn't last that long, and, Mina overtakes him easily afterwards. And then after that, we see Kacchan. So here's a departure from the anime and manga. So in the anime, they don't really have any, like, reactions to each other, whereas in the manga there is. So in the anime, Kacchan reveals that he has learned to use his explosions to propel himself into the air and overthinks. In the manga, I don't know why they're always next to each other, but Kacchan is next to Deku, and while Deku is preparing to go, Kacchan puts up his arms and he's just like bakusoku, and then Deku's just like, hey. And then after that, Kacchan just goes, whooshah! And he blasts through the air, and Deku's just like comical reactions. Whereas in the manga, Deku's just left behind in the dust. And then in the manga, the next panel is Kacchan just looking over to Deku, kind of being like, how did Deku do? But it's like a very casual / sneaky glance. Like, he finished, and he's just like, okay, but how did Deku do? This boy has nothing in his brain except Deku. However, this is because we don't really hear Kacchan's voice, and the way he's drawn, he's not drawn really angry or anything. When I read this panel, it just looked very much like an afterthought. Like, he was just like, yeah, I think he messed up or something, in his quirk, or he was a little off, and whatever. And then he's just like, Deku. That's how I read it. But in the anime, Nobuhiko-san, who is Kacchan's voice actor, he does like a Deku, like angry, like, what about Deku, But I think it's still about the same. The point is, Kacchan has to know what Deku's up to. In the anime, Nobuhiko-san's voice performance is a little bit more like, discuss Deku. Anyway, moving on. There was no more BakuDeku after that, because then it's just Deku being like, oh, how do I control my power? And he's thinking about, the time he was with Orumaito, and Orumaito was like, yeah, you just gotta feel one for all. He's a terrible teacher. And then, the last test, which is throwing something very, very far. Uraraka has the best score, it's infinity, and then, it's a robot. They have to throw a robot. And, Deku, he's about to just be like, I'm gonna risk it all on this one throw. That's what it means to be a hero. But it's foiled by Aizawa. And I'm actually gonna spend some time here because this is incredible foreshadowing for what happens in the war arc, which is chapters 260 or 250, 240 onward to chapter 300-ish. So, I don't know if I talked about it in previous episodes. Didn't, because the manga doesn't really talk about it yet. But Deku's name, it's an alternative reading of Izuku. So, in Japanese, the kanji for his name, you can read the first character as like de, like as in like, and then the ku is the Izuku, the same ku. But if you say Deku, that is a term referring to like a wooden doll, like a puppet. And yeah, it's meant to be like an insult, like this is a useless wooden doll, it gets beat up and stuff. But what's interesting is that Aizawa is the one who makes this connection. He gets mad. He's like, you know, you remind me of a hero. He once staked everything to save people's lives. But, you know, if you do that and you become incapacitated, you can only save, basically you're gonna save like one person, and then other people are gonna have to save you, and they're gonna have to protect you. That is not an acceptable kind of hero. When you do that, you're gonna become like a Deku. Let me see if I can find what he actually says. 同じ万有でも、お前のは一人を助けて、デクの棒になるだけ. So, you may have the same vision, same goal, same like attitude, but for you, once you save one person, you're going to become a Dekunobo, a Deku, a wooden doll. You're going to be useless. And that is exactly what will happen multiple times through the manga, and you'll see Deku struggle to not succumb to this, but then eventually he does because, you know, character development, he becomes more reckless. Instead of someone who runs away, he runs towards the danger. He feels like he is the chosen one, and the chosen one has to take all of this burden on his shoulders. But yes, anyway, after that, then we get a panel, or actually, we don't get a panel, we just see Deku from the back, and he's just thinking furiously how to get out of this. Meanwhile, the onlookers, Uraraka, Aoyama, Ida, and Kacchan, they're talking. So, Ida's just like, he makes a comment like, oh, this is, he's gonna show the power that he, you know, showed in the exam. And, you know, or like, is he gonna do it? Wait. Ida says, 指導受けてたようだが. And then, Kacchan's just like, 定石宣告だろ. So basically, Ida's just like waiting for, you know, Deku to use the power he used in the exam. And he's just like, what's going on? He's having some problems? And then Kacchan's just like, yeah, he's probably just gonna get expelled. Pretty similar in the anime. And he's just fighting with Ida in the anime, actually, a little bit more. In the manga, it's not so much. He just actually looks more calmer in the manga. He's just like, yeah, he'll just get expelled. Where in the anime, he's just like, Deku is quirkless! He can't do anything! And Ida's just like, what are you talking about? You know, in the exam, you know, he did that amazing show of power, and then they fight. And after that, you know, in the meanwhile, Deku figures out a way to get past this. He'll just break one finger as opposed to all of his bones. Wow! Deku got so smart. Don't break all bones, break one. And then after that, we get a shot of Deku just launching it into the air. I'm gonna check if it parallels Kacchan's attempt. You know, he even uses the same arm. Well, they might be, but they might both be right-handed. It's probably not significant. But anyway, he launches it into the air. First panel, cause you gotta know this BakuDeku's a thing. First panel is Kacchan, and he's just like, like, what the hell? And after that, Aizawa's just like, and he's just looking at the little screen, and, ちょっと待って, the number that Deku gets is 705.3. If you remember, Kacchan's number was 705.2. Oh, wow! It's like, I don't know. These two might be related. Like related as in their character development is related to each other. Like, the number he gets is exactly 0.1 higher than Kacchan's. They're getting set up to have a fight. Like, they're gonna fight. Those numbers are way too close, and Kacchan is not gonna like that. And guess what? So the chapter ends, and you go on to the next page. We get like one quick page of, Deku be like, haha, yes, I made it. And he's thinking, and then you turn, and then you see a huge panel of Kacchan just being like, I make that noise, but that is literally the expression he makes. The first panel is actually of Uraraka being like, Yatta! Hiro rashi kiroku dashita yo! Like, finally did the heroic thing, launched the power, and Iida's like, yeah, I remember that power. And then this just ... with Kacchan. And then, second panel of just Kacchan being like, ugh, what the heck? I actually find his expression kind of comical. I think in this part though, it's not meant to be comical. It's just how he draws mouths. Anyway, this isn't an angry face. How do I describe it? If he was angry, his mouth would not be open. His mouth would be like gritting. He would be gritting his teeth. That's the kind of anger he would show. This is an expression of like extreme shock. And it makes sense because, as you know, for some reason, well, actually, no, we know why. Kacchan believes even after Deku gets into UA that he's quirkless. Like, somehow this boy who is just like, oh, Deku's beneath me, yet he believes that even though he doesn't have a quirk, he's smart enough to find a way to get into UA. He's accepted that. You see the contradiction where he's just like, Deku's beneath me, and he's stupid, and he's useless. But also, I totally believe this quirkless boy has brains to get into UA, even though it doesn't quirk. Yeah. But he doesn't really, acknowledge that until, reality literally shoves the truth in his face. So in this case, it's not that he's found a way. Well, I guess it is. So right now, reality has shoved the truth that, no, Deku actually has a quirk. He actually is able to become a hero. That is why he is so shocked. And Kacchan is just like, Nanda are? 個性の発言は漏れなく4歳までだ。ありえねえけど実際。So that panel is just him being like, what the hell? People's quirks are supposed to manifest by age 4. No way. But actually, and then this panel is just him still with his mouth open, just being like, what? I has no words. And then the next panel, we get a flashback. Oh, I take back what I said earlier. I said earlier about how we don't get the flash. So the first flashback that we get, or not the first one, the flashback we got in the previous chapter, where Kacchan is rocking him back and forth against the wall, being like, why did you go to UA? I had said earlier that this doesn't get reused. It gets reused in the anime. It gets reused right here after Kacchan's just like, no way. And it actually plays out the whole scene where, he's just like, no. Well, not the whole scene, but it definitely plays the point where, Deku is just like, no, Kacchan, I'm going to UA. In the manga, it's just just one line he said. Kachitotta ndatte. So that's just a small part of what he says. And basically it's just saying, I'm gonna take victory, I think. Kachitotta. Totta is to take. Kachi is to win. Probably that. Yeah, someone told me I could be a hero, and this is my effort. Anyway, he has a flashback. Kacchan's always having flashbacks. I think we don't see this in the manga or anime, but you know what? I think we have evidence to believe that all day Kacchan just watches flashbacks of him and Deku all the time. That's all he does. That's why he's so obsessed, because his brain is just full of Deku and every little moment they had together. Any case, next panel, he just launches right after Deku, but in the anime, they take some time to show Kacchan's losing control. So we don't know about this until later on when USJ, when they're fighting the villains, Shigaraki, I mean. And it's only there when we learn that Kacchan is actually, despite his appearances, he's pretty calm and he thinks and stuff. We don't know that yet, but in the anime, they sort of, I think, start to build the foundations for that, because in the anime they expand on this, this scene of, or this beat of him running after Deku. So, like I said, in the manga, Kacchan just starts running after him with explosions in his arms, and he actually like really close to the ground. It's just like this immediate reaction. Whereas in the anime, we actually get him with his mouth open, and then after that, a shot of his palms just kind of like twitching, like his explosions are just going off without him, really controlling it, because he's just like seized by this emotion. And then, in both cases, he's just like, どういうことだ, kora! Wake o ye deku deme! It's like betrayal, I think. Not just betrayal of like, and this is more of like later, right? When we get the flashback, so I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. But betrayal, but first and foremost right now, it's betrayal of what he believes. Like, all his life, he's known the facts. One, he is the best because everyone told him so. Because he has an amazing quirk, and everyone told him that if he has an amazing quirk, then he can be a hero, and heroes are cool. All Might is cool. Therefore, I'm cool. Therefore, I'm strong. Therefore, I'm the best. Like that. Those are the ironclad facts. The other fact is Deku is useless. Why? Because he has no quirk, so he can't become a hero. Therefore, he's weaker than me. Therefore, he's nothing. Those are very secure facts. However, Kacchan always kind of knew as a kid that this wasn't the case, because, you don't bully / beat up someone or basically be mean to someone unless you have some insecurities about them or yourself and you're just projecting it onto them. So in Kacchan's case, he has insecurities about himself. Like, he's cocky, but that kind of covers up this fear he has underneath, I think, of how, if he doesn't have a quirk, what does he have? And like, already in the chapters before, people have commented, people have commented how he's not very hero-like. He's rash, he's delinquent, he dresses like a delinquent, doesn't wear a tie, puts his feet on desks. So if they were not in a quirk society, he'd just be a loser. Like, yeah, he's smart, but he doesn't really it doesn't seem like he really is into like academics. He's only there because he can do it easily, and because that's what you need to be a hero, and he wants to be a hero. Betrayal. This is the emotion he's feeling right now. He's feeling like life has just betrayed him, like he's been lied to all his life. Or right now, that worldview is getting shaken up. And he's like, Deku, I need you to explain. Have you ever noticed that he's always asking for explanations from Deku? Like, he's not really like just beating him up. If we go, I just keep going back to the previous chapter, but like, this is important, guys. When he's shaking up him against the wall in behind the Aldera middle school, he's demanding explanations. He's not like, I'm just gonna beat you up because I hate you. It's, why didn't you do what I told you to do? How'd you get in there? I need answers. Like, I don't understand. Like, he needs to understand, because if he doesn't understand, well, it's just gonna eat up at him. And he knows it's probably related to, how he has these, I guess, false beliefs of what it means to be strong. And, Deku, who is supposed to be weak but is defying that in some way, he must have the answers. And so that's why he goes to Deku constantly. Again, right here, when he goes after Deku, he's just like, どういうことだ? Like, what does this mean? He's like, Kora! Okay, oh yeah, say something, tell me, explain, I am confused. He needs to know, otherwise he's just not gonna be happy. It's not, I hate Deku. It's never been, I hate Deku. It's, Deku makes me feel insecure. Deku represents something I don't understand. He represents a contradiction. By all things in this world, Deku should be useless. He in the beginning of this volume, Deku says himself, when he was 4 years old, people are not born equal. You think Kacchan doesn't know that? But the fact that Deku, who had no quirk, and got into UA, you mean maybe that is a little bit incorrect? What do you do when your worldview is, being threatened like that? You lash out. And that is what he's doing here. And he's just like, I need answers! But, Aizawa stops him. And it's drawn a little comically here. He's just like, trying to be gremlin and grab for Deku. But he can't. And in the anime, after Aizawa releases him, we get a overhead shot of, Deku kind of warily walking past him. Like, he looks at him like he's waiting for Kacchan to say something or do something, and then he decides, okay, he's not going to, and he's just like, okay, I'm just gonna scurry off because Kacchan's in a mood. And this entire time, in the anime, and I'm talking about the anime, Kacchan is just standing there being, something happened and the brain is going through many places, and he doesn't glare at Deku until Uraraka's just like, Yubi daijoubu, which is like, is your finger okay? Also because he's just like, how dare you talk to a girl, Deku. What? But yes, in the manga, we only had one panel of this. But I guess you can kind of infer that way. In that panel, you get Uraraka asking that, and then Kacchan looking over then. And then, this is where we get our first montages of childhood Kacchan and Deku. Again, this boy clearly has nothing in his brain except Hero and Deku. This boy doesn't... I don't know, he has so many flashbacks ready at hand. But yeah, in this next panel, we just see, Kacchan. He's actually in a pretty similar pose to the one that Deku had earlier. I'm just seeing these parallels, man. So the pose I'm referring to is the one we saw on page 165. This is the shot of Deku from behind as he's, trying to figure out what to do. How does he pass this robot throwing test? And then the pose I'm talking about right now is Kacchan. And also the camera's, from the back, and he's glowering at Deku while there is just a series of, their brief manga moments together. So the first panel is... Actually, it's just Kacchan! Or it's not Kacchan. It's just Kacchan. 泣いてるだろ? これ以上は僕が許されんぞ. So that's the very first scene in the manga where Kacchan beats up Deku for protecting some random one, and Deku's just like, if you go beyond this, I'm not gonna forgive you. I'm not gonna let you go with this. Don't do it, Kacchan. I know you won't. You're not this kind of person. So that's first flashback. Second flashback is the one that everybody loves to go back to. And the grandmas, love to go back to this one where he's just like, just take a dive off of the roof. Although, he does. That's not the panel. The panel shown here is just Deku being and frustrated, but also I'm not gonna speak up and say anything. And Kacchan's just walking out, and his two lackeys / useless friends, losers, they're just making comments man, he's a third-year middle schooler, he should know better now, but he's still having these dreams. That's the panel. And then after that, it's the words, ついこの間まで道端の石ころだったろうが. He's supposed to be just a pebble in the road. That's what he's thinking. And then we get this one panel. It's actually a happy memory. And I believe this is the first happy memory we get of the two of them. Because up until this point, if we weren't told by one of, Kacchan's lackeys that they were osana najimi, You could have just read this as, oh, he's a bully and, Deku is his victim. But again, as we know, even if you believe that, if you just look more closely in the text, Horikoshi has written in a way where it's like, nah, they had a history together. Like, it's not as simple as that. And I'll have to look for the interview, but you can Google this. You can Google this yourself. But Horikoshi himself states that he regrets his portrayal of Kacchan in the beginning. He was trying to do shorthand. Like, again, you only have so many panels in a page, in a chapter to tell your story. He doesn't have the luxury to really be like, oh, they have a complicated relationship. So the best he can do is he has to have characters say they were childhood friends. He'll draw Kacchan not reacting when the rest of his classmates laugh, only reacting when, Deku actually speaks up. And even then, like, everyone's laughing and he's just kind of standing there being like, again, and then he explodes, right? Or just like, I actually didn't notice this. I saw this, I think earlier this month, but someone pointed out what the can that Kacchan is holding when, so this is like back in the first chapter when the sludge villain was coming out. The can that Kacchan was holding is called lip service. So all the crappy stuff he said earlier, it's probably just him being crappy. And again, Deku pointed that out. He's just like, ugh, you gotta speak before you gotta think before you speak, Kacchan. Like, if I committed suicide, you get in trouble. He didn't take it seriously. If Kacchan was this bully that went after him day and night, they wouldn't have this kind of, like, reaction. At the very best, it's a complicated relationship. A negative one for sure, but it's not, he bullies me and I hate his guts. It's, we had a history together, I can't really interact with you, but I don't know what to do, but we live near each other, we're going to the same school now. Ooh, and it's just kind of like festering, these kind of feelings. In any case, all that though, all we've gotten so far is just, an expression of how negative their relationship is. Like, they were Osana Najimi, but it's all bad. And it makes you wonder, like, did they ever have a happy moment together? This flashback, This is the only one we've gotten canonically so far at the time of recording. And this is the flashback where Deku is baby and he's just like, "Ii na, Kacchan, kose kakkoi mon da na," or "kakkoi mon na, boku mo hayaku denai kana." Oh, he's so cute. Basically, he's just saying, "Oh, so nice, Kacchan. Your quirk is so cool. I hope mine comes soon." And he's just chasing after, Kacchan. He's carrying like their bug catching box thing, and Kacchan's the one with the net. And then baby Kacchan is just like, "Deku ga donna kose demo, ore wa issho kanawane tsuno," which is like, no matter what quirk you'll get, you'll never beat me. And in the anime, again, they expand this a little more. Like, in the manga, we only have enough for one panel shoved at the very bottom. In the anime, it's like, probably like a good 10 seconds, 15 seconds of just a shot of baby Deku. And I'll put this in the video, because, this is a podcast, but I'm putting it on YouTube, so I can sort of do that. I'll put a screenshot of baby Deku's face. But yeah, we get a shot of baby Deku's face, and then, a shot of him walking, and then a shot of Kacchan looking back, and he's just, like, happy. No problem with Deku trailing after him. It's just two of them too. Like, none of their lackey friends are there, or the other people that were in their childhood memories. It's just him and Deku. It's like they were on good terms at one point. Maybe even best friends. They were hanging out, just the two of them. Also, important, if you notice, Kacchan's already calling him Deku at this point. So that means they didn't immediately fall out in line with each other after Kacchan got his quirk and started calling him Deku. So they were still friends even after Kacchan called him Deku. We just don't know when they stopped being so friendly with each other, and it just became really awkward. But at least for some time, definitely after, he started calling him Deku, they were still friends. Friends enough for, them to wander off into the woods by themselves, catching bugs. Anyway, this scene not only demonstrates that, wow, these two characters are complicated. It also demonstrates why Kacchan has a problem with Deku. Because before, he had no problem with Deku. Deku was Deku. He was useless. But the thing is, he was behind him. He was beneath him. He didn't get in his way. He wasn't trying to become a hero. He was just, he was part of his worldview. And the fact that he's thinking of this right now, he's thinking of a time when, this was true and he had no problems with Deku. There was a time when he had no problems with Deku, but that's not the case no more. Most importantly, it's not the case anymore because Deku has a quirk. His worldview is being challenged, So that's what this flashback represents. It represents, the fact that they were childhood friends and they used to get along. After he called him Deku, I think this is probably before Deku actually realized he was quirkless, right? Like, this is before, his mom took him to go see the doctor. But the number 3 is, this is also a representation of his worldview. Deku is beneath me because he has no quirk. As long as that's the case, then I'm okay. But it's not. And we know this is the truth because in the next panel, where we get a shot of Kacchan, glaring in a very particular manner that I'm gonna break into in a second. He repeats it. Machibata no ishikoro dattaro ka. He's supposed to be a pebble in the road. He's supposed to be a pebble in the road. Like, he keeps repeating that to himself as if to reassure himself of something. Reassure himself that Deku is not a threat, even though his whole body keeps reacting to Deku like he's a threat. Like, that contradiction, you see, he's trying to process this, but also not really. Like, he's not consciously processing it, but reality, keeps shoving itself in front of him, being like, hey, by the way, there's a contradiction in the way you think about the world and also what actually happens, and I know you're smart, so you have to deal with it. And he's just like, no, you can't make me. Deku is useless. I know that to be true. And he's just gonna keep saying it until, he's like, okay, fine, maybe he's not useless. Now, we're gonna talk about Kacchan's expression in this panel. So, you can argue that he's just angry that Deku is defying him or whatever. But I actually argue that this is actually another panel where it's being shown that Kacchan is afraid. And the reason why I say this is because the screen tone used for the shadow across his face, it's not always used for characters who are scared, but it's commonly used for characters who are scared. So a lot of characters in manga I've seen, whenever they're afraid, they'll have like a shadow over their eyes, and that screen tone is usually like the sandy texture. That's the same one that's being used here. And I mean, characters when they're angry, they can sweat too. But if we're really trying to sell that he's angry, there should be no sweat drop. But there's a sweat drop right underneath his eye. And his teeth, it's not drawn in a way of like anger, it's drawn in like a kind of like, expression. Like if you make that sound with me, it's like, ooh, like, oh god, I don't know what to do. That kind of, expression. And you make that when you're scared, when something you don't understand is there, and you're like, I need to address it, but I don't know how. Oh god, panic. But in the anime, interestingly, and I think this might be because Nobuhiko-san, this was, early stages of Boku no Hero, and I think actors they don't really have a feel for the character quite yet. But Nobuhiko-san, he just, when he does Kacchan's voice, when he's just saying Michibata no Ishigoro Tataro ga, he says it in a very constipated way. Like anger, not the other constipated, but like emotionally constipated way. So that's the slight difference, but also remember, I think in the anime, there's like probably like a shot of his hand being like shaky because from anger, but also from fear. And after that, Aizawa reveals that, haha, Lo, I'm not gonna expel you. I can't do that. That was order lie. And oh, there's another anime change here. And also by this point, it's the episode Rage, You Damn Nerd. So there's an anime only scene. After Aizawa reveals the lie, there's Kirishima and Seto chatting. There's a shot of Kacchan, or the shot where Kirishima and Seto are chatting. Kacchan is pouting visibly, and after that, he does a head turn and he pouts. And this is in response to Aizawa's announcement that he's not going to expel anybody. And I'm not sure why they did this. I guess you can argue that he's disappointed that Deku's staying, or he fell for the whole Aizawa's gonna expel them kind of thing. Mileage may vary. We're moving on though. We're gonna move past the scene where Aizawa and All Might talk. All Might's like, you're actually not that bad, right? You saw potential in Deku. Aizawa's just like, you're not supposed to have favoritism. You're kind of sus. And All Might's like, yeah. And after that, we get a scene of Deku leaving the school, and he's just like, wait, I'm so tired. And that's just because he saw the nurse, and the nurse healed his finger using her quirk. But then Ida catches up to him, and is like, you there. And that's the start of their beautiful relationship. I'm so sad for Ida. I'm like, he used to be a main character, guys. He used to be a main character. But now he's not a main character anymore. Now it's Todoroki-kun. You know, the Ikemen always win, and Megane-kun doesn't win. Anyway, after Ida catches up to him, and he's just like, yeah, I got to do better. There's a lot that I can't do right now. Uraraka runs after them, and she accidentally calls him Deku, because she keeps hearing Kacchan say that. And Deku's just like, 本名はIzukuで、Deku はKacchanがバカにして。And then Ida is the one who says, 別称か, which is an insult, huh? So the full translation is, my real name is Izuku. Deku is just what Kacchan calls me to make fun of me. And then Ida is like, oh, an insult. So even when Deku is, explaining the insult, the clear insult for his name, he doesn't say, oh, it's an insult, Kacchan was doing it to bully me. He's like, oh, yeah, Kacchan just calls me that to make fun of me. Interesting, right? And I bring this up because, an argument I keep bringing up or making since, episode 1, which is titled Kacchan is a crappy bully, is Kacchan's a crappy bully! Okay, if he's the bully that goes after Deku, well, you didn't really do a good job because Deku doesn't even see you as, a bully. He's just kind of like, yeah, he's something, And I guess you could chalk it up to just how Deku is as a person. He's very empathetic, and he tries to see the good in everyone before the bad. You actually see this a lot. And I had a note earlier where Aizawa kept saying oh, your power will not allow you to become a hero. And when I reread that, I was thinking, but you know what? Will allow him to become a hero? It's his power of empathy, right? So what I'm trying to say is, throughout the series, his true power is not actually one for all. It's actually his power of empathy. When he fights against Todoroki, why do you even remember that fight? It's because Deku broke through the abusive cycle that he, was a part of. That he still was trapping himself in, mentally. When he fights Kacchan, he understood why Kacchan was feeling this way. He understood that there's miscommunication between them. And even though he physically lost, he won that fight because Kacchan, and Deku versus Kacchan too, Kacchan becomes his true ally. He's just like, okay, I'm gonna be a part of the secret group, right? When he fights against Gentile, I actually don't remember that fight very well, so I can't say much, but I do believe that was when we started getting backstories for the villains, and I think Deku probably thought about it a little bit. Like, Gentile is not that bad compared to, like, Stain, or like, oh my god, Chizaki, which is the mafia guy. His true power is empathy, and perhaps that's also why, even for himself, when he was in really bad situations, he was just like, no, Kacchan is just mean. He's not really, like, a villain. But I guess while that maybe didn't serve him that well, it did save Kacchan in the end. I mean, I forget if this was a tweet someone wrote and they just translated an interview that Horikoshi gave. But Horikoshi said somewhere that he always knew that Kacchan would not become a villain. Like, he would never turn and become a villain. Like, he's not a Sasuke. And I made this argument in, like, the previous episodes. Kacchan is a Naruto. He is a shonen protagonist. He has the blonde hair, he's spiky, and he's just like, I'm gonna become a hero, right? But, Deku also did say that after he got his quirk, he started going down, the bad path. I think that's in the second volume. But maybe he doesn't go down the bad path, or he becomes a true hero where he's empathetic, he's not so selfish, and he actually addresses his own weaknesses, because Deku never cut him out, never really shut him out. And I like that message. Not that, people should always keep people who aren't good for you around you. Like, I think it really is case by case, so I'm getting a little personal here. So I come from a very, I guess it could be more traditional, but my parents are Chinese, and they have very traditional values, and one of them is, your kids stay with you, and everyone is a big family until, you die. And also, when you have kids so that they take care of you. Your kids have a very utilitarian purpose. And you can probably guess that doesn't lead to very healthy dynamics in the family. And I grew up especially feeling like I was never enough for my parents. Like, no matter what I do, like, it would never be enough. They have this ideal in their head, and even if I gave my life for it, like, it's not enough. And even for myself, I realized that it's probably not healthy for me to be with them, but it's really complicated to just be like, I'm not gonna be with my parents anymore, And again, this is kind of where the case by case comes into. So maybe another alternative universe where I wasn't so bound by familial piety. I would be living on my own, and my parents would eventually pass, and I'd just be like, okay, and that's totally fine, if that's what I choose. But for me, I was like Deku to Kacchan. I saw that they began to change. Not so much like over the years, but I guess certain events happened and that forced them to change. Otherwise, they would lose the family structure. And I saw that change, and I decided to be like, I'm gonna actually watch you and, actually see if you have changed. And if you have actually changed, then the answer of I'm just gonna leave for sure after I become independent, that's not so clear-cut anymore. And I think in doing that, even though at times it gets really hard living with my parents, I take care of them, and they still don't treat me very well sometimes. But it's like, if I didn't do that, I think the alternative would have been they would have become more jaded, they would have become more bitter, they probably would become more meaner, more selfish. I just think about how, even though it's not your responsibility to save everyone in your way, it's not your responsibility to take on every single person's burden, especially like if you're talking with like online friends, you don't know these people, we're all just strangers to each other. And even like friends, in person, like, there is no obligation to be an emotional support for anyone. However, if this person that you meet is hurting, and you could say something, that one something that changes their life. Maybe they just need like that one moment of empathy. Maybe that's enough, to change their path. So I'm coming from a place where I think the reason why I'm the way I am is because I have had friends who were that to me. I don't think I was, like evil as a little kid, but I mean, because, we live in a racist society, I was racist when I was a little kid. I, didn't know that, I grew up with like stereotypes, and I just didn't know that like, maybe you shouldn't consider certain, ethnic groups as like lazy or like whatever, especially if, your friends are from those ethnic groups, or, homophobia. Like, we all have internalized homophobia, I think, but like, when I was younger, I didn't even know what gay meant, but, I heard from somewhere that it's bad, and I just latched onto that, and then like any instance of like anything labeled bad, I was like, that's bad, and I would just not interact with the person who was labeled as gay, even though I didn't really know, right? But, if, I guess to use nowadays terms, if someone just canceled me that instant, and I never got a chance to like learn what I did was wrong, and I never was allowed to grow, I don't think I could be the person I am today. I don't think I could actually be empathetic myself and maybe help people who don't know better. Like, I talk to friends, I talk to my family about certain things sometimes, and it's like, they listen to me because, I come from the same place. Like, I was, their kid. I'm their kid. So it's easier to listen to reason when the reason is coming from someone who is like you. And anyway, this was a long tangent from just me trying to argue that I think Kacchan, a big part of Kacchan's character development and the reason why he was able to character develop so quickly is because Deku saved him. He saved him when he was really young. Holding out that hand meant the world to Kacchan. And I'll get more into it when we actually get to those panels, but I just want to say, like, if you just think about Kacchan, he was a little kid. Everyone kept telling he was strong. And when he fell off of that log, and then his other friends were just like, yeah, hurry up and get up. It was like reinforcing that he was really strong, but also making him lonely. Like, if he actually got hurt, his friends wouldn't have helped him. But Deku didn't treat him like he was insurmountable. I mean, he does idolize him, but he also still was like concerned, and he went after him and it was like, Kacchan, daijoubu? Holds out a hand. And the fact that stays, and the whole reoccurring, that image of holding out his hand and taking his hand stays until like, it becomes a cover topic. Volume 29, people? Any of you guys own Volume 29 or have seen Volume 29? Like, I think that's Deku's true power. Empathy. And that's how he becomes a hero. Not because I want one for all. And Kacchan was the first one to experience that power. And that is why Kacchan's like, oh, Deku is powerful. Because he changed even someone like me. Anyway, then this chapter ends with them going home, and All-Mighto's like, oh, I'm gonna teach tomorrow. And then he turned the page, and All-Mighto says, you's going to have a battle. It's gonna be rescue and like villain. Also, by the way, here are your hero costumes. You gotta fight in them. There's a brief BakuDeku panel here where Kacchan's just like, oh, yes! And he has like this face, right? This grin. And behind him, Deku's just like, oh, hero costume! And then everyone's just like happy and like pumped up. And then there's another panel of like Deku being like, costume! And he's like gripping his bag because his costume actually was made by his mom. And then the volume ends. And that is the end of volume 1. Okay, now I'm gonna quickly run through the beginning of volume 2, which for those who own Boku no Hero volumes or you collect them, this is our first BakuDeku cover. Wow, guys, hasn't even been like more than one volume. We already got a BakuDeku cover. Are they canon or are they canon? Guys, I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's see. Let's also open the front cover. Oh, so for the Japanese comics, and I said this before, they have a jacket. That's the cover. But then if you open it up, there's like usually an illustration underneath. So for volume 2, it's the old designs for Uraraka Ochako. She's so cute. Her older hero costume was more like space. Like, I mean, she's still space themed now, but like, it was sort of like a space fighter jet, sort of. You know what? I can't describe it. It's definitely sci-fi inspired. It's not as like body tight. She has like this weird contraption around her tummy. I guess maybe Horikoshi always planned for her quirk's downfall to be she gets like upset tummy. But she's cute. Anyway, you open up the volume. First page. First, like, I guess, cover page is Uraraka and Tsuyu-chan. They're just, like, saying hello. And then Deku is, like, in the back being like, oh, I've been spotted by the camera. And then you have the table of contents. And it's another BakuDeku! Wow! BakuDeku moment! Kacchan is screaming volume 2 and he just exploded the T. And Deku's like hiding behind the S and he's just like, Takere kuso nado. This is the rage, you damn nerd. I guess that's the theme for this chapter? Yes, no, that's the title of this chapter, chapter 8. There's a bit of exposition on how hero costumes work in the society and how you need to update your registered quirk in order to get like a hero costume. We see a brief moment of Mama Midoriya, being that supportive figure in his hero career. Remember the trio of Orumaito and then Inko and then Kacchan. Well, Inko is pulling all the weight right now and she's just like, I want to support you because I said some bad things when you were younger and I'm sorry. But I made this costume to make up for it. Mama Midoriya is so wholesome. And after that, you turn the page again, you get a picture of the entire cast. Momo is on the right. I miss the days when her costume didn't have this huge gaping hole all the way down her tummy. Like, she looks more athletic. Like, her outfit is more athletic looking in this one. In the first version, and I miss it. I get her quirk is like, she uses the fat from her body to make things and you need like airy. You know what? That's a BS excuse, okay? Like, just wanted fan service, okay? You just wanted fan service. That's it, I get it. Anyway, moving along, it's a shonen. Like, they're never gonna change, or they're gonna change, or I hope they're gonna change, but I don't think it's gonna happen with Boku no Hero, so I'm just gonna be like, okay, Horikoshi, you get pass there. Anyway, Deku is just like, oh my god, her outfit, Uraraka-chan's outfit is cute. Oh, the straight feelings, but no, he's not straight, maybe. And then Minato's like, yeah, being a hero is great, because, well, all the girls, right? And Deku's just like, eh? I just laugh at that. Like, there's a little bit of blushy on his face underneath the hood. And Uraraka's just like, in the back. And then there's All Might being like, oh my god, it's so obvious, Deku is such a fanboy. And then Orumaito explains some more about how you'll have a lot of villains that are in the outdoors, but also a lot are indoors. So we're gonna have a simulated exercise where you beat villains indoors. And then we get a shot of just Kacchan and Deku looking. Horikoshi just likes showing these two. Like even if it's like, meant for, us to see Deku's expression, Kacchan's like always in the shot somewhere. He just wants you to remember that, hey, by the way, Kacchan is a thing and he is with Deku. Do not separate. Like, guys, I'm being facetious here, but also I'm not kidding. Like, how many times have I said, by the way, Kacchan's in this shot. By the way, Kacchan's over there in the corner. Like, Horikoshi wants you to know they're important to each other. Anyway, this panel's nothing special. It's just them being like, Orumaito is explaining and they are listening. And then, some more talking. Everyone is just like, questions. We have questions about how this works. you know, and Kacchan, his thing is like, so it's okay for me to just blow things up, right? Just send them flying. He specifically says, "Buttobashite mo ii desu ka?" That's actually weird. Like, that's like the most polite he can be. Ii desu ka? That's such a delinquent way. Ugh. Anyway. Then they have team-ups. It's funny because, you know, up to this point, we see that Kacchan doesn't get along with Ida, who is supposed to be a main character. He was supposed to be a main character, but he's not popular. But anyway, the two who haven't been getting along, they get paired up, and Uraraka and Deku get paired up, and Deku's just like sweats. Oh god, there's too many girls. He's just an awkward boy. He's just like, I haven't even had friends before. Oh, well, I don't know. Just hasn't had friends in a while. But anyway, there's panic. It's just like, haha, yeah, everyone's paired up. And then, conveniently, guess who's going up against who? It's Deku and Kacchan. Because the next page, Automaito takes out an A ball, and Deku's team is A. And then he takes out a D ball, and Kacchan's team is D. And, you know, middle page is just Kacchan being like, ugh, and Deku being like, ugh. Everyone is just wide-eyed. And then after that, the last panel is Deku and Kacchan being silent. Silently staring into the distance. But this is where we diverge in the anime. So in the anime, they expand on this a lot more. After it's revealed that they're gonna go up against each other, we get a shot where Deku is like, oh, and like is kind of like anxious and like uneasy, and then he looks up at Kacchan, and I actually took some screenshots, and I'll insert them in the video at this point. There's a profile shot. He looks to his left, like warily. And it turns out that Kacchan's been glaring at him this entire time already. Like, Kacchan beat him to it. And he just has this, like, face, like, I have words with you. You didn't tell me things. Your quirk is a thing now, and how did I not know this? Like, it's just this glare of, like, he's, you know, with this mask, you can't really see his eyebrows. But I think it's, like, a sus, angry glare. You know what I mean? He's like, you, narrows eyes. But also, I don't like you right now. You are hiding something from me. And then after that, Deku, like, looks away and he's just like, oh no, sweat drops. And then we get a shot, the Arthur hand meme shot. And he grips his hand. He has a wiggly smile, or not wiggly smile, a wiggly mouth. And he's just like, you know what? Like, and then he just, how do I describe his face? He makes himself determined. And then he's just like, looks back in Kacchan's direction with those eyes. And then Kacchan's just like, and then he's just like, also, can I say, I think this is the beginning of the BakuDeku silent communication system, name tentative. We see this like in Heroes Rising. They just communicate exclusively in glares and grunts. They'll just be like and then just glare for like an awkward 5 seconds until someone's just like, oh, by the way, hi. And then even the character's like, oh yeah, yes. They're so gay. Anyway, they even expand on this a little more. This is truncated in the manga, because all we get is a shot of in the manga after we get of Kacchan and Deku being surprised. There's a shot of buildings, and then after that, the next panel is All Might being like, oh, he's telling Uraraka, Deku, and Kacchan, don't be afraid to go all out, and like, I'll stop you if it gets really bad. And then we get the panel of just the small panel of Deku and Kacchan together, and there's just like dot between them. But in the anime, as Kacchan and Ida are preparing to go in, All Might is like, don't be afraid to get hurt and go out. And Kacchan is like, looking at, All Might. And then all of a sudden, after he finishes saying, go all out, he turns, he looks at Deku one more time. And Deku is like gripping his hand, like, either he's preparing, Actually, I don't think he's preparing anything. I think it's just symbolizing the fact that he has a quirk. And he's just kind of like, am I ready to use this quirk? You know when you're anxious, you like to squeeze things. People might want to squeeze things like a rubber ball. I think that's what Deku's kind of doing here. And yeah, thank you, Bones, for the extra BakuDeku moments, because Horikoshi only gives them like one little teeny panel. And then after that, in the manga, we cut to a next shot of Ida being like, let's see, he says, Kunren to wa ie. Oh, this is when he says that even though this is just for an exercise, it doesn't feel good to just be like villainous. But then Kacchan, whose brain cells only have Deku in them, is like, Oi, Deku wa kosei ga aru nda na. He's like, Deku has a quirk, huh? And Ida's just like, wait, didn't we establish this like 500 times? I don't know what your deal is. You saw the assessment test? He basically, he's like, you saw him use his power, right? Although it seems like it carries like a huge risk. And then he says, しかし、君は緑谷君にやけに突っかかるな. So, but you seem to get particularly angry when it comes to Midoriya-kun. And then the next panel is a serious one. Kacchan is smiling, but this is a smile that he gives whenever he goes up against a challenge kind of smile. He's not happy here. This is not a happy smile. And it actually kind of looks like, because it's drawn more seriously, it kind of just looks like he's at his limit. He's lost it. And he basically says, この俺を騙してたのか、クソなどが. So he says here, did he trick me? Stupid nerd? Or shitty nerd, however you want to translate it. Now, in the anime, they expand on this greatly. So in the anime, they definitely hype up how this is a moment of explosion. Like, this is a moment of a volcano about to erupt. Like, oh yeah, Bakugo, he's a funny character that gets angry a lot very easily. Haha, No. That was all comedy. This is, we're about to see Kacchan actually be angry. That is what this shot that they added in the anime with the color of him in the back, of his back. If you notice, it's like red. Yeah, because up until this point, even though he's been pretty, irritated at Deku, it is not until he learns that Deku has a quirk, and his first reaction is he tricked him. He tricked Kacchan. Not only was he not the pebble he was supposed to be, he lied to Kacchan. That's interesting, right? Because Osana Najimi, and they used to be friends, or right now they're like fractured relationship. We're gonna get to that in the next episode. I've talked for a very, very long time, but I hoped today's episode illuminates again or further the nuance that Horikoshi puts in his characters. Look at how much I can say, and we're still in volume 2. Guys, I'm trying my best to go fast. The entire manga is not BakuDeku, but there's so much BakuDeku, and there's so much BakuDeku content to dissect, even though it's just like a few panels. Like, in just a few small panels, look at how much I can say. And then the anime goes ahead and adds more scenes and adds a little bit more context, right? With the color, with Nobuhiko-san and Yamashita-san's actually I think Nobuhiko's first name. I think I should be saying Okamoto-san. Sorry. Either way, Kacchan's VA and Deku's VA, they add, their interpretation to it. And, everything's an interpretation. Me reading the manga is probably the closest to Horikoshi's brain, but even then it's colored through how I'm reading it, right? In my own experiences. But it's interesting to see how the anime staff interpreted it, and then how Horikoshi, drew it, and then kind of comparing these two, you kind of see oh, this might be what Horikoshi's going after or trying to convey, right? Because, say for example, so many times I kept saying Kacchan is fearful, right? And I'm using the manga to back myself up. But then but you can argue oh, that's just your opinion though. Clearly he is not fearful. But then there's the anime adaptation, right? It's an adaptation. Someone read the manga and interpreted it the same way, and that's what they present to you in the anime. And there's a reason for that. And the reason, I believe, is, again, Kacchan's character is very on this worldview of the world. The strong have quirks. The quirks that are strong can become heroes. He fits that very well, so he's going to become a great hero. People who aren't, like Deku, the complete opposite, they're not going to become heroes. And when that gets disrupted, he feels uncomfortable because that's all he knows. That's how the world works to him. And it's important to also note that right now we're setting up Kacchan as a character who's sort of impulsive and reckless. Oh, actually, no, not reckless, but he's willing to charge into things, take challenges on, whereas Deku is afraid, unconfident, insecure, wants to run away, although he doesn't, right? He does stand his ground. But, I think he's a little bit more cautious right now, because, he's like, I don't really have full control of my power. But I guess as he racks up more wins, which are saves, he just loses that, and he really doesn't value his life. Whereas Kacchan starts to take on some of those savior qualities. And like I mentioned earlier in this episode somewhere, there's a role reversal. I think Deku starts becoming someone who wins more, and Kacchan starts becoming someone who saves more. But ultimately, I don't think Deku's power is one for all. His true power is his power of empathy, his power to see the good in people and to give them that second chance, that third chance, that whatever chance. And sometimes that saves people. Sometimes that saves people so much from a life of isolation, a life of abuse, a life where you are basically a villain if people didn't tell you were a hero, in the case of Kacchan. But that's that. I hope you enjoyed me rambling. This episode, I was hoping it would be an hour. It's almost 2 hours. And, I'm gonna cut it down, so hopefully it's not actually 2 hours when I upload this. But yeah, I've been talking for a while. And I hope you've enjoyed my voice, ranting on and on about our dumb boys. I can't wait to cover Deku versus Kacchan. I purposely try to end it here because that's that one we're gonna just dedicate an entire episode to. Okay, we're not gonna talk about anything else, but Deku versus Kacchan won! So there's that. See you all in the next episode.